Is there any consensus number one QB right now?
I don't think there is a consensus number one QB right now. I think if you had to put a consensus, it would be Malik Willis. Now, it's not a literal consensus because we don't have Malik Willis as QB1, but I think that is probably what is going to drive a lot of this. I think Malik Willis will go ultimately inside the top 10. I think Chad Ryder of NFL.com had the Panthers trading up from 6 to 3 for Malik Willis. Now, that is a bit rich for me. I don't think Malik Willis is even a top 10 player. I would not take him in the top 10, but I think he does, right? He gets this bump because he has this ceiling level of tools. And the concern I have, and the reason I'm not buying in completely into Malik Willis as this top 10 player, is that everyone wants to tag him as this Josh Allen developmental curve, right? Like by the time he's in his third year, we'll find it from him. But this is a little bit different than Josh Allen's arc, right? Like he came out as a true junior from Wyoming and like developed a little bit there, but was not receiving the best of coaching. He like Malik Willis transferred from Auburn. There were people already giving up on his development, and we haven't seen like him get significantly better on the things that you need to do to play quarterback over the course of his Liberty career. And now a lot of that is because of the offensive line he played behind. He was not given the best supporting cast. I get it. But when are we actually going to see it from Malik Willis? He's significantly older than what we've seen. And, that's why when we compare him to PFF's quarterback one in this class right now is Sam Howell of UNC. He's the only true junior of these guys. We haven't seen his Kenny Pickett year, right? Like Kenny Pickett had this outstanding year for Pittsburgh in a year that we literally haven't seen for Sam Howell, like in terms of his development, in terms of his age. I do think that you're buying into Sam Howell, what he can be, more than you are some of these other guys, because there's more reason to believe there's time for him to develop, right? We saw outstanding play, projected number one overall pick play from him when he had De'Ami Brown, when he had Daz Newsome, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams. Then, and that was one type of offense, a very vertical offense. He threw like exclusively deep balls, all that stuff. Howard serve an arm. Then Mac Brown says, we're going to run a completely different offense because we don't have any of these guys. It's going to be QB run heavy and RPO heavy. And like it was a shell of what Sam Howell could be, but still he grades well. Still he has success. So
he was running like a fullback. It didn't make any sense.
Exactly. He's the same size as Malik Willis, 6'2", 220. And like he broke as many missed tackles as Malik Willis. I think he ranked number one in forced missed tackles among quarterbacks in the Power 5. And now he's not going to run like Malik Willis. He's not running like 4.5s, but like still, I think there's a lot more. Everyone talks about this class of traits. Like Desmond Ritter has some traits that I like. Malik Willis obviously has these traits, but Sam Howell does too. And I'm excited to see his senior year, which will be in the NFL, which will be ideally with a better supporting cast.
Interesting perspective there.
But the reason we're talking about traits and all these things of all these guys is that the year for these quarterbacks never materialize. Mm-hmm. Like you rewind a year ago and teams like the Eagles are kind of punting on the draft class last season and kicking into this year. And nobody was like, that's just immediately stupid because next year's draft class quarterbacks is going to be terrible. It's an awful thing to be getting rid of these guys. It was like, all right, well, let's see how these guys go. Like we were thinking Spencer Rattler was potentially like an elite number one overall pick. The dude doesn't even make the season of his own team. Sam Howell didn't develop. Malik Willis didn't take the step forward. Like all of these guys that were supposedly of the elite quarterback group this year, none of them got better last year. What the hell happened?
Well, I think my favorite excuse of them, who all have excuses, is Sam Howell's. In that, like, he literally lost 4 NFL players in that offense. And like objectively lost 4 NFL players, and the offensive line wasn't good the year prior, and it wasn't good this year. So there are a lot of excuses, and I think there's a difference between excuses and reasons. I think that's the reason Sam Howell did not have the stellar success that you expected. A lot was put on his shoulders at UNC. From Malik Willis, I don't know. Like, when is he going to, turn the page here? When is he going to do, not have these terrible interceptions on tape, right? There are not as many of those on Sam Howell's tape. Now, does he have the high-end traits that Malik Willis does? No. Malik Willis is one of one, a very rare player, a top 50 player on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, a guy that could run a 4.5 flat at the combine. That's rare for the quarterback position. And for the other quarterbacks, and I know we haven't discussed these guys a ton, but like Desmond Ritter doesn't have the high-end traits of a Howell and a Malik Willis, but you have seen it materialize, him improve over the course of his Cincinnati career. I think for Kenny Pickett, it did, right? Like in his last season at Pittsburgh, where he's been there forever, he had a lot of success and showed off some arm talent. And I think a lot of people are like, wow, if that's what he can be in the NFL, he's this kind of high floor projection. Now, the hand size thing will come up. Will it be as small as people are saying? Who knows? I think the combine will tell. The double jointed thumb, I don't really buy into. If this thing's 8.5 or these things are 8.5, like 8 3/4, there was literally no historical success of quarterbacks with sub 9-inch hands. So there will be some concern there. He'll be Kenny Two Gloves his entire career. And then the other quarterbacks that we really haven't brought up, Carson Strong, he either makes his money at the combine or loses it with this medical check. If this knee, right? If this knee comes back bad, he will be off boards. And we've had conversations with Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, former scouts, where like, there's certain injuries that take players completely off boards. And people are, how is this guy falling past this team or this team? It's because they're off. Like if there's a certain injury flag, which I think that could happen with Carson Strong, he will fall down board significantly. Those medical checks will be important.
And Matt Corral, the guy, is he going unnoticed here? Is he getting overlooked a little bit?
I think
from Ole Miss?
The biggest concern with Matt Corral, from what I'm hearing, from what I see too, is that the offense is probably the most gimmicky of any of these offenses, right? Like runs a lot of RPOs and all that stuff, and
open stuff over the middle of the field all day,
and just first read for Matt Corral, and that. Like, are you going to just change who he is, or are you going to buy into this college-y offense and change your offense to cater to his skill set? I'm not doing that if I draft him in the top 10. I'm not doing that if I draft him in the top 15.
Nobody's going to run that kind of
exactly.
something.
Now, when my guy Lane Kiffin finally gets another opportunity in the NFL, maybe we'll see it. But I haven't seen him coach since I was season ticket holder for the Raiders back in the day.